What if a war was not started for national security, but to hide something much bigger? While headlines scream about missiles, bombings, and enemies overseas, another story quietly disappears from the spotlight, the Epstein files. At the same time, Trump's own administration cannot even agree on why this war began. No clear plan, no clear timeline. Just confusion, rising inflation, and young American soldiers being sent into danger. So the real question is chilling. Is this war about protecting America or protecting one powerful man from a scandal that could shake his presidency? Stay with me, because the answers might surprise you.
Usually, that happens before we invade a country, but technically only Congress has the power to declare war, but also technically you're supposed to get a permit to tear down the East Wing of the White House, and they're not going to get bogged down in technicalities with this group. The president sent a letter to lawmakers in which he claimed that it is too soon to know the full scope and duration of this conflict. Now, on Sunday, he said it could last 4 to 5 weeks.
A calm look at the situation raises a serious question. How does a modern superpower begin military strikes without a clear legal and strategic process? In the United States, the Constitution gives Congress the authority to declare war. This rule exists for one simple reason. War is the most dangerous decision a government can make. It sends young soldiers into life or death situation. It reshapes the global economy, and it can change history for decades. Yet what is visible here is something very different. Action first, clarity later. When a leader launches attacks while saying the duration of the conflict is still unknown, that signals something troubling. Military operations normally require months of planning. Generals analyze logistics, supply chains, possible enemy responses, and diplomatic fallout. None of that sounds visible when the leadership itself says the length of the conflict cannot even be predicted. One day it might last weeks, another day it might last longer. Such shifting statements create uncertainty not only in Washington but across the entire world. Financial markets react quickly to instability, oil prices rise, shipping costs increase, and inflation pressure spreads through global trade routes. Ordinary American families begin to feel the consequences through higher fuel prices, expensive groceries, and rising living costs. A war thousands of miles away suddenly becomes a problem in every American household. Diplomatically, the impact is just as serious. Allies expect a clear strategy before supporting military action. Without a defined objective, partners hesitate. Some governments fear escalation. Others worry that a rushed conflict could trigger a wider regional crisis involving multiple countries. Strong leadership normally shows preparation, patience, and a long-term vision. Yet what is visible here is uncertainty from the very top. When the commander-in-chief admits that the full scope of the conflict is still unknown, it leaves soldiers, allies, and citizens asking the same uneasy question. If the destination is unclear, why was the journey started in the first place?
Yesterday, he said it could be more than 4 to 5 weeks. Today, he said it's too soon to know, and tomorrow we'll be shooting for Christmas, I guess. However long it takes until everyone stops talking about how many times his name is in the Trump Epstein files. That's how...
When timelines change every day, people begin to search for deeper explanation. War planning usually includes specific goals, clear military targets, and measurable outcomes. But when the timeline stretches from a few weeks to an unknown future, observers begin to wonder whether the conflict has a political dimension beyond national security. The controversy surrounding the Epstein files has been one of the most explosive political issues in recent years. Documents, testimonies, and investigations connected powerful figures to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. Public attention on these files created intense pressure across the political landscape. Media coverage, public debate, and legal questions began dominating headlines. History shows that political leaders sometimes face accusations of using external conflicts to shift public attention away from domestic controversy. Scholars often describe this phenomenon as a diversionary conflict. The logic is simple. When national focus moves to war, political scandals receive less attention. News cycles fill with military briefings, battlefield updates, and international diplomacy rather than investigative reports. Whether intentional or not, the timing raises uncomfortable questions. The moment political pressure grows, a sudden foreign conflict appears. Headlines shift overnight from investigations and documents to missile strikes and military deployments. Public debate changes direction within hours. Meanwhile, ordinary Americans carry the cost. Military deployments require billions of dollars. Defense spending rises quickly during conflicts. Government borrowing increases and economic pressure grows. Families dealing with rising rent, medical bills, and fuel prices suddenly face another financial shock created by global instability. This situation creates a powerful contrast. Political elites debate strategy in television studios, while young soldiers prepare for dangerous missions thousands of miles away. The gap between decision makers and the people who pay the price becomes painfully visible. Whenever a war begins without a clearly defined objective, citizens naturally start asking difficult questions. One of the biggest questions today is simple but powerful. Was this conflict started purely for national security, or did political survival play a hidden role behind the scenes?
I hate to say I told you so, is what I'm saying, but I mentioned last night that Team Trump's been throwing out a wide and conflicting array of reasons for why they decided to launch this attack. Was it to stop Iran from enriching uranium or long-range missiles because Israel was going to do it anyway? Was it for regime change? Or maybe it's what Trump's press secretary Caroline Leavitt said it was, another hunch.
A clear strategy normally speaks with one voice. Military planners, diplomats, and political leaders coordinate their message carefully so allies and citizens understand the purpose of the operation. Yet the explanations surrounding this conflict appear to move in many different directions at the same time. One explanation points to nuclear concerns, another suggests missile development, a third argument talks about regime change. Yet another claim hints at preemptive defense. When multiple reasons appear simultaneously, the overall picture becomes confusing. If the goal changes depending on who speaks, observers begin to wonder whether a unified plan exists at all. Strategic confusion carries real consequences. International diplomacy depends on credibility. When world leaders hear different explanations from the same administration, trust begins to weaken. Allies become cautious, and rival nations begin calculating their own responses. Diplomatic uncertainty can easily increase tensions rather than reduce them. Another dimension of this situation involves the relationship between Washington and Tel Aviv. Israel views Iran as a direct regional rival and security threat. For years, Israeli leaders have pushed for stronger international pressure on Tehran. Some analysts believe American involvement in such conflicts often reflects strategic cooperation with Israeli security priorities. That relationship is complex and sensitive because it affects stability across the entire Middle East. But the most dangerous risk is escalation. Military strikes rarely stay isolated. Retaliation becomes possible. Regional militias may become involved, and neighboring countries can be drawn into the conflict. What begins as a limited operation can grow into a prolonged confrontation, affecting trade routes, energy markets, and global diplomacy. Ordinary citizens watching these developments feel a growing sense of uncertainty. When reasons for war change from statement to statement, confidence in leadership naturally declines. People want to know one simple thing: what is the real objective? Without a clear answer, the world watches carefully, wondering whether this conflict is part of a long-term strategy or the beginning of a much larger and unpredictable storm.
I think it was important with respect to the timeline, but I think the president, prior to that phone call, had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States assets and our personnel in the region.
A good feeling. Think about how serious that phrase is when lives are on the line. Modern military decisions are normally built on intelligence reports, satellite data, diplomatic signals, and weeks of analysis from defense experts. Military planners study enemy capabilities, possible retaliation, regional alliances, and civilian risk. War is supposed to be the last option, taken only when evidence clearly shows a direct and immediate danger. Yet the explanation presented here sounds much less precise. A feeling is not a strategy. A feeling is not intelligent. A feeling cannot protect soldiers standing thousands of miles away from home. Young American troops are the ones who stand on the front line of every decision made in Washington. They leave their families, travel across the world, and enter dangerous environments where a single mistake can change lives forever. When military action begins without strong, clearly explained evidence, the risk for those soldiers increases dramatically. A rushed conflict creates confusion on the battlefield. Commanders must adapt quickly. Supply lines become uncertain. Unexpected retaliation becomes more likely. Beyond the battlefield, economic pressure begins spreading through American society. War costs money, and modern wars cost enormous amounts of money. Defense budgets expand quickly during conflicts. Billions of dollars are spent on aircraft operations, precision weapons, troop deployment, logistics, and security operations across the region. That spending eventually reaches taxpayers. ordinary American families begin noticing the impact in everyday life. Fuel prices move upward as global oil markets react to instability in the Middle East. Transportation costs increase, businesses raise prices, grocery bills climb, rent becomes harder to manage. The chain reaction touches every household. While politicians debate strategy on television, parents worry about their children serving overseas and workers struggle with rising expenses at home. A war launched on instinct instead of solid proof raises a difficult moral question. Should the lives of soldiers and the financial stability of millions depend on a political leader's feeling? Strong leadership demands evidence, preparation, and responsibility. Without those pillars, a conflict can quickly become a burden carried by the very people who never had a voice in starting it.
This is all very tricky for Trump because his followers in the MAGAverse most definitely did not vote for this war. This is the opposite of what Trump promised he would do. And so now his nut jugglers are working overtime to spin this in a positive way.
A major part of Trump's political rise came from a promise repeated again and again during rallies and campaign speeches: no endless wars. Many supporters believed that message strongly. After years of costly military conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, millions of Americans were tired of watching their country become involved in foreign battles. They wanted a leader who would focus on domestic priorities such as jobs, economic stability, and infrastructure rather than sending troops overseas. That promise created a powerful political movement. Supporters believed the United States would move toward a more cautious foreign policy. They expected fewer interventions and more diplomacy. Yet the reality unfolding now looks very different from that expectation. When a leader campaigns on peace and then moves toward another foreign conflict, it creates a deep contradiction. Political supporters begin to ask difficult questions. Was the promise genuine, or was it simply a campaign message designed to win votes? Trust in leadership depends heavily on consistency between words and actions. When the two move in opposite directions, confidence weakens. At the same time, a powerful communication machine begins working overtime. Political allies appear on television and social media, trying to reshape the narrative. Some describe the conflict as necessary defense. Others frame it as a heroic show of strength. Messaging strategies become carefully crafted to convince supporters that the war still fits the original promise, somehow. But reality is stubborn. Families with loved ones in the military cannot ignore the risk. Every deployment carries danger. Every escalation creates uncertainty. A parent watching their son or daughter leave for a conflict zone does not think about political messaging. They think about safety, survival, and the hope of seeing their child return home. This contradiction reveals something important about modern politics. Words spoken during campaigns can inspire millions, but actions taken in power reveal the true direction of leadership. When promises of peace suddenly transform into the drums of war, citizens naturally wonder whether the movement they believed in has been quietly replaced by something very different.
One of the names that is not on his list is Donald J. Trump, even though his name appears in the Trump-Epstein files hundreds of thousands of times, and even though key documents related to accusations made against Trump by a young teenage girl have disappeared, Comer feels that Trump has been asked about this enough.
Political accountability is one of the strongest foundations of democracy. Powerful leaders are expected to answer difficult questions, especially when serious allegations appear in public record. When documents and testimonies raise concerns about influential figures, citizens expect transparent investigations. Justice systems exist precisely to ensure that no one stands above the law. The controversy surrounding the Epstein files created enormous public attention. These records connected powerful individuals from politics, business, and entertainment to Jeffrey Epstein's social network. Every new document raised new questions about influence, privilege, and responsibility. For many Americans, the issue became a test of whether the legal system treats powerful leaders the same way it treats ordinary citizens. At the same time, the sudden eruption of international conflict shifted national attention dramatically. Television screens that once displayed investigations and documents began showing missile launches, military maps, and battlefield updates. The national conversation changed direction almost overnight. This timing leads many observers to consider a troubling possibility. When a political scandal grows large enough to threaten reputations and careers, a major international crisis can redirect public focus. News cycles are powerful forces. War headlines dominate global media. Investigations slowly fade from front pages. While political debates continue, the human cost grows quietly in the background. Soldiers deploy. Families wait anxiously for phone calls. Government spending rises. Inflation pressures build as markets react to instability in oil-producing regions. At the same time, ordinary Americans are left with unanswered questions. Why did this conflict begin so suddenly? Why do explanations keep changing? And why did the shift toward war happen precisely when public scrutiny around the Epstein files was becoming impossible to ignore? No, the most important voice should come from the public. Every viewer watching has the right to think critically about the situation. If this war is truly about protecting freedom and security, why are ordinary families carrying the financial burden? Why are young soldiers risking their lives while political leaders argue in studios and press conferences? And one more question deserves to be asked clearly. If a leader shows such enthusiasm for military action, should the sons of ordinary citizens be the ones sent into danger, or should the families of powerful politicians stand beside them on the battlefield? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, your opinion matters. An honest discussion is one of the strongest tools any democracy has. If you want more deep analysis like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join the conversation.